I just wanted to check how many of you are designers and developers? Both and engineers. Oh my god. Marketing people?
Mercy?
Marketing people or
sales, business development.
Business development. Yes, great. Yeah. Good. Just so I have some kind of feeling. It was a lot of designers. I'm a designer. I'm working at a very small group at Ericsson of 7 people at Ericsson Research. And we are called the User Experience Lab, and we are kind of a cross-competent group consisting of designers, people with teaching background from game development, engineering, coding, psychology, bits and pieces of different things. And our mission at Ericsson is to sort of inspire and influence and inform the rest of Ericsson and the telco industry about things that we think could be possible futures based on trends that we see and the technology that we develop. And I'm not really going to talk about the Internet of Things, whatever that is. I found this. I actually nicked it from a guy called Mike Kuniowski. He used this at a presentation once, and kind of this is framing the Internet of Things. I hate that term because it's kind of so focused on the technology, the Internet of Things in parentheses, and same with ubiquitous computing or physical computing and all those kind of similar terms. We are very much more interested in what the things might do when they can talk to each other. So we have this series of projects going on where we try to from Ericsson's perspective is that we provide infrastructure to things that communicate. And when we look at how people experience the infrastructure, I mean, you can't see it and you can't really touch it or know how it works, but you can sort of indirectly experience that it's there. And everyone tries to kind of figure out and create cognitive and mental models for what's actually happening behind the scenes. And that's more the field where we work. We try to come up with concepts that can visualize or make clearer what the actual relation between everything which is connected means and how it can be legible. So this is kind of an image to frame that. We recently developed, or actually not recently, it's 4 years, 5 years since now. But we had this series of interviews and we made a lot of different prototypes for making people understand better how to connect things. And we found that people had this mental model of the network, which was that it is like a series of many A to B connections. And when we started to talk to people about, well, what if everything is connected simultaneously and everything can talk to each other all the time, fluently and kind of dynamically? Most people had really hard times understanding why and how, and like the whole concept kind of fell down because they had this mental image about a connection is, or a network is, when my computer is connected to the internet or to a printer or to a camera in serials. So we kind of said, okay, we already have an interface which what we try to explain is happening in, which is Facebook. So we created a Facebook for Things to make people better understand what the Internet of Things is all about. Like principally, we don't pretend that we're going to make a Facebook of Things at Ericsson. That's never going to happen, I think. But it is kind of a good pedagogical tool for making people think about what it can lead to. So, and we also gave all these things chatbots to talk to us with. So we can actually talk to connected things here. I don't know if you can all read this, but I'm talking to my car and asking it where it is. Can you read it in the back?
Translate for us old people.
I will. So basically what we try to show with this is that first, I mean, you could possibly communicate with a thing through natural language using different kinds of technologies. That's not the big thing here. The big thing here is that it has a piece of intelligence and can know about a set of options for a certain scenario. So when I ask it where it is and say that it's not where it's supposed to be and ask it to call the police, it has the option to call the police, which is a different service in this network. So you could say that I'm first kind of communicating within a vertical or a silo, one-to-one with the car, and then the car jumps out to another horizontal layer, which is the police or anything else in this network. Because as you know, in Facebook, in the news feed, everyone can kind of interact with everyone. So we used basically a Facebook paradigm to make people understand more about what networkedness is about. Because that's what we think is the most thrilling piece of value in the Internet of Things. It's not to have an app to connect to your bathroom scale. It is to make everything interconnect. That's where the real power lies, we think. In another example here, we had like when I'm arming the home alarm and go from my home, my light tells me that, hey, you forgot to turn me off, because it knows that I left the house, for example, and ask me if I want to automate this, and I don't need to be reminded every time. So it's also a way to reveal over time capabilities of an ecosystem of things with some kind of capabilities. So that's one project that we have worked on, and we took this around the world and did a lot of user studies, both in Asia, China, Japan, US, Europe, and created a prototype that we showed to a lot of people. And we found something which, I mean, many of you recognize this from robot research, where you kind of have this uncanny valley just before a robot becomes human-like. If it's almost human-like, it's that scary, basically. But if it's like an industrial robot ABB arm going like this, that's not so scary. Or these vacuum cleaners things. So we kind of we found a kind of similar thing here when we asked people about the social web of things and how the things expressed stuff back to us, which was that they became really scary when they expressed feelings, for example. That was a lot of reactions. So you found this spot up in the left corner, which is when the things act not human-like, but kind of have agency or have some kind of way to act. And we call that category became like digital pets or things that might be more acceptable to most people. Yeah, that's one of those. Another things that people were really scared about or skeptical about, especially in the US actually, was that the whole Internet of Things have to just become like this huge marketing machine, which gives me targeted advertisement all the time in every situation. It might, but that was a concern. Now to something different. This is also about interconnectivity or connection, because when we work with concept which is about networkedness, it's not necessarily about physical things. So we had this project to try to explain what does how do we connect objects through metadata, not like a real internet connection, but through matching databases about which describes things. So we created this prototype that was basically a video on demand store where all the films were tagged with location. All the scenes in all the films had location data from the film location on all the scenes, which meant, this is Spider-Man, I can post the movie, find out where this scene is on the map just by having the data ready, using Google Maps as a mashup, and kind of watch how that place looks in reality, or at least when Google was there. But that also means that I can cross-connect all the movies in the store and match this spot with all the other movies that also has a scene filmed here, where I'm posting the movie right now. So I can actually zap through the same place in all the different movies. That's also another way to think about a network of objects. That it doesn't necessarily mean that it can be remote controlled, or it can be giving me data or sense something. It could also be used to connect things in other constellations, like this. It's also kind of fun how this becomes a time machine. You can actually zap back in time on the same place. You're not falling asleep, are you?
No.
What happens if they reconstruct the area from one movie to the other? Will it totally change the picture of it, or will it still the same?
Well,
will it still use the same old Google Maps, or will it use the old Google Maps?
I guess, well, in this prototype, that will be depend on Google, which is not necessarily a good thing to do, to depend on Google.
Like a movie from the 50s or 60s or something like that. Will it look the same, or will it use the old pictures from back then? Or
Yeah.
you
It will, yeah.
right.
In this prototype, I mean, obviously, it doesn't exist any movies with like location tags. So we actually had a group of students working a whole summer just watching movie and kind of annotating on an Excel sheet.
Do you need any for next summer?
It was kind of on paper, I think it was a good job, but
Have you an idea how we could do it? Could you automate it in any way? Checking locations in movies?
I bet Google could, because they have the Street View database and the image recognition technology to actually do that. We don't have that, and we don't have access to those APIs that Google have. So we did the tagging we did manually, but the whole prototype was for real. So we actually implemented the whole thing in like this tiny Motorola set-top boxes with 250 megahertz processor in it.
At what point do the movies become tailored to us and contain content that is personalised to us? And
I will come to that.
adverts are personalised to us.
You were kind of preceding my presentation.
Sorry.
No, yeah, but that's actually an option, and a scary one perhaps. I'll kind of indirectly come to that, because the latest thing we did, which was kind of an extension of the social web of things, the Facebook concept that we made, was that we, during that project, we actually created a functioning prototype back end for connecting devices and creating a way to help automate the rule creating process for how the things should behave together. And in that backend, we also had a database with the state and the action history of what all the things had been doing, because we wanted to mine the data and find patterns to help create new rules. And that data could also be used in other scenarios. So what we did here was that we took that data from what all the things had been doing for the last week or a month, and fed that into one of those journalist robots. There exists commercial algorithm services which can actually generate a readable article just based on data. There are several big news networks that use that. Forbes, for example, and ESPN Sport News. They have web articles written news reporting from, for example, sports events, which is not human made. It's written by a computer, just based on the fact box data that they give the robot. So we did the same here. We took the data we had in the platform, ingested that into this article narrative generating journalist bot, and it came out with kind of a news service for what happened within your network of things for the last week. You have to be kind of egocentric to kind of like that service, I guess. But as an experiment, you could get like small stories about what happened within your Internet of Things. So we broke that down to a series of Twitter feeds, which we then hooked up into Flipboard, and we had like a magazine. You can flip through what our things have been up to the last week or so. Yeah, that's how we did it. But you could also, when you had the collection of text narratives, we also found a way to ingest that text into one of those web avatar services, like Försäkringskassan have like Fråga Anna, Ask Anna, and you, Hanna, I said, okay. This little figure that you can talk to. We found a web service called SitesPal, which has relatively good APIs for ingesting and getting out feeds from those. And it has like it's animated, and it has text to speech, and it has lip sync, and it can spit out a flash feed, which we could then embed into a ready-made TV studio template that we had made. So we could have a full-blown, fully automated TV news service just from the things that we have. And that looks like this. See the
Hello, and welcome to today's Social Web of Things news, automatically generated news updates from Connected Things. First, groundbreaking
Hello,
news.
and welcome
If
to
you are
today's
hoping for a
Social
distress
Web of
message
Things
from
news,
your phone is
automatically
received.
generated
It
news
seems like the
updates
phone
from
and its
Connected
earphones have
Things.
been left behind at Starbucks on
First,
25
some
Grand
breaking
Avenue,
news.
where they are now waiting to be rescued.
Message from your
It has been confirmed that the phone is in deep sleep mode, and it sends a radio ping to the cafe's picocell every 15 minutes in order to save power. The phone is understood to have gotten mild to moderate screen injuries. The earphones are not injured. FedEx has offered to arrange a rescue operation and say they can bring the items to your current location within an hour
And
for
say they-
£39. Starbucks ensures
Within an
that
hour
the stranded
for
products are in
£39.
safe custody and no immediate action is necessary, so you could also pick them up yourself tomorrow morning.
Custody and no immediate-
Starbucks is open from 7 a.m.
So pick the morning.
So you can sort of decompose that narrative from what data we put into it. I mean, the location, the state of the device, the action the device had done according to the situation it was in, and also we added the service layer. I mean, offering services that could help out in this situation. FedEx could bring it home to you, but Starbucks didn't really want that because they want you back to buy another coffee. So it kind of clashed of interests there. I have a couple of more. So you can try to think about what kind of data went into it.
The Krupp's coffee maker, a member of the Krupp's traditional kitchen appliances group, has died at the age of 12. The coffee maker, originally from Germany, has had problems heating water since September, making only occasional half cups of lukewarm water until its retirement in October. Your municipality's Waste Management Council informs on their webpage that they offer a disassembly and recycle service for electrical and electronic equipment. Nespresso Limited sends their condolences, and in a statement, Krupp Limited said, the coffee maker's memories will be with Krupp always. Price Runner reports that they currently know of 34
Germany
suitable
has
successor
had problems
products with
heating
similar
water since
specifications as the late
only
Krupp's, costing from £119 to £499. Now over to today's financial news. Your electricity provider Waterfall Limited has introduced a new bonus program encouraging you to save money by reducing your power consumption during daytime. This means that you can get cash credited to your electricity bill by turning off the lights, the heating and other devices during office hours. If the average electricity usage goes down compared to before joining the program, you will earn a bill credit of 75 pence per kilowatt reduced. Your
Now over to
refrigerator,
today's
the
financial
spokesdevice
news.
of your household's union of grid-connected
Limited
appliances, says that this can easily be accomplished by
you to save
automating the
money by
lights and
reducing
heating to
your
turn
power
off when there are
consumption
no people
during
at home.
daytime.
If you
This
want to
means that you can
participate in the
get cash
program
credited
and
to your
automate your
electricity
lighting
bill
and
by
heating,
turning off
just
the lights,
answer yes
the
to the
heating and
text
other
message you
devices
received
during
just
office
now.
hours. If the average electricity usage goes down compared to before joining the program, you will earn a bill credit of 75 pence per kilowatt reduced. Your refrigerator, the spokesdevice of your household's union of grid-connected appliances, says that this can easily be accomplished by automating the lights and heating to turn off when there are no
At least, but it is it shows a way of thinking around the relation between things and services and sensors and data and the cloud and how to augment reality and all those kind of things. So we really don't see the Internet of Things as an internet. I mean, of course it is the internet, but it's kind of more. I would not dare to try to define the Internet of Things. But I think that the state that we are in today is that we're kind of in the first phase of mainstream Internet of Things. Apple recently launched a section of their web store which is called app-enabled devices. That's sort of the current state, I think. That you have a commercial gadget and you have an app to control it, and you get data from it, or you can send it commands. That's what we have today. But that's what I've been talking about. That's just one-to-one connection. the main bulk of them are really silos. You can just do one thing, and it's not really scalable if you have 150 things with an app and they can't really do anything together. You have to control one in one. It's like having the sofa with 150 remote controls in it. This is a silo. It's also a ghetto. It's trying to promote its own. It's a nepotistic kind of thing. I think that the network of connected devices will evolve into a much more fuzzy landscape of products which are hybrids of physical materials and immaterials, or all the other things which is also consisting of, but which is not visible or touchable, but they are there as an equally important part of the product as the materials it's built of. And that puts some requirements on how we think about designing them, I think. For example, all those immaterial parts need to be somehow, it needs to be some transparency, the window, you see. Technology needs to be sort of legible from a human perspective. If it's not, people tend to get scared. And it becomes sort of dangerous, and you don't know really what it's up to. Because I think that when you add networkness to things, you also at the same time add the perception that they have agency, or even that might even lead to more people tending to anthropomorphize the products themselves, that they treat them as if they were beings. Not alive beings, but alive enough beings, and that really changes the perspectives from users, I think. So to go back to this picture, which basically is representing this silo thinking. It is a product with some data and a way to control it, but it's nothing more. It has the clouds behind it. We really want to tell people that it's much more this landscape that we're going towards. It's a more free-floating web, social web of things was the word we invented. But it's more of an ecosystem which is a whole rather than one-to-one. So it's I think that's concluding my message now. And also, I didn't really want what to bring because we do a lot of things, but this was some of the projects that we do at Ericsson as a kind of a huge network provider or equipment provider for infrastructure. What we do to try to figure out what we should do 5 to 10 years from now, and what kind of landscapes we are heading towards. And you too, I suppose. So thank you. Any questions? We're all flabbergasted.
One question. Well, I work at a company that works with, we have many customers that's in this race now. It's the white goods market, in this race to make them connected. And they're very protective because they want to be first. I want to be first to connect my washing machine with my iPhone app. But you're talking about this landscape. Have you any idea how this will happen and when? Because now it's really silos between the brands.
Yeah. No, I don't dare to say when it will happen. But I think that we sort of saw the same with, I don't know if it is the same, but it's kind of similar to how the web evolved a little. I mean, in the beginning we all had our own little homemade web page before it all became social. And that's more of a maturing process, I would say, which we can see the same pattern repeating in many situations.
Philips just released the API for
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
the connected
the Hue.
Light bulbs.
Light bulbs, yes, exactly. Which people already hacked
Mm.
to get it running, and then they released it. So I
Yeah.
guess someone has to dare to release it first.
I think that's a good thing. I mean, I was kind of glad when they did, but I also think that that's kind of this växelvirkan, the dynamics between the hacker communities and the tinker and maker communities, which kind of pushes that direction, and the companies which wants to have control. Same thing happened with the Kinect, for example. Microsoft had turned totally on the openness of that gadget. So I think from these examples, I think more and more will turn that way more quickly, perhaps, depending on the company. But I mean, in the white goods area, I'm always very keen on asking why they want to connect first. Not just because everyone else is doing it, but for what? I've been a little bit involved with Samsung and their washing machines, which they have connected with 3G modems, and all the mechanics which goes into just configuring the SIM cards from the factory in Taiwan till they go to the warehouses. All that machinery is unbelievable, and all they use it to is to retrieve usage information and upgrade the software, which is kind of...
Yeah, well, they ask why, but they're creating this need, I guess, for the end users. So it's everything from looking what you have in your fridge and automatically make your shopping list, and then turn on the oven and whatever.
Yeah.
So they have scenarios, and
Yeah.
so they think people will learn to need this.
I think in general there is a need for developing new competences in how to orchestrate ecosystems, not just with your own product, but in relation to others. I think that's, and the step before that is obviously to understand that there is a need for that, and why you should do that.
Hi. You said it's sort of the social web of things, and I've actually heard it being called the Internet of Us as well, which I think is quite a nice...
Internet of...
Us.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite a nice way of saying it, but sort of, if we are in this internet, which I think is already happening, I mean, how do you police who is in that Internet of Us? Like, who is allowed in us? Is it corporations that control it? And, for example, you have the example of HAL, and I don't really mind if HAL's corrupt, but I mind who is benefiting from HAL being corrupt. And you have the phone in Starbucks, but if we can access that information, so can other people who can get to the iPhone first. Like, what kind of infrastructure, security infrastructures are developing along with the Internet of Things, us, social web? So I've been to your sort of concept centre at Ericsson, fancy, like, isn't this cool thing?
The studio.
Yeah, and it was really, really interesting and fascinating, but it all seems very one directional, like, wow, wouldn't this be great commercially? And I'm interested in the ethical side as well.
Yeah, I'm too.
I just wondered what your sort of view on that is.
I mean, you could ask the same question about the internet in general, and I guess my mandatory pitch would be to say that the 3G is more secure than the open internet, which it is, but it's not always practical. There is a lot of work going into investigating that, but I don't think anyone have a good answer. I think in many cases the best medicine is to educate and to raise awareness of these things. one thing, for example, with the talking avatar news service, which potentially is something that could be used for all kinds of news reporting. Or the text, for example, if there are real concerns that if that becomes the default way of presenting written text on the net, all the text you could see while browsing the internet might be directed to you based on your social graph or your browsing history, which kind of
already it becomes, I mean, if you have a Google account, Google is it becomes like this. I mean, I had to go in and like delete everything it knew about me because like as a designer, it's important to have this like wide range of sources, and it was just always coming up with the same results.
Yep.
And it was saying, oh, you use the internet most on a Tuesday, and you do this, and you search for this at this time. I'm like, well,
so this has the potential to be the same, but on steroids.
Yeah.
But even the articles you read after finding them through Google might be re-rendered as new editions as you click on them. So there are real concerns.
Thanks for your presentation. First of all, I'm Tim from Linköping University, and I was wondering where do you think is the main hurdle or complication in actually achieving this dream or this vision of the social web? Is it a technical thing? Is it an ethical thing like we discussed? Is it something between companies? Is it acceptance from people? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think one big issue is who should kind of have responsibility and accountability in being hubs for these kind of things. Let's say it's Facebook; they already kind of own your social life. If they also knew all your gadgets and what you were doing, they know the rest too, basically. So in that case, trust becomes a huge issue. I don't think we really can control much of it because it's so kind of spread out. So nobody has control. Nobody kind of steers it. So
is it trust between the user and the provider of these services that you can decide, okay, I want to share my information, for instance, with FedEx and with Starbucks, but not with
both that
the
and
police?
Also between companies, because if my company allows your company to see what all my customers' devices are doing because you want to interact with them, that's going to be a huge discussion.
Yes.
I think
suppose so.
It very quickly becomes political as well. For example, you take the example of the normal internet that we have today. Say Pirate Bay, I mean, that kind of moves around nationalities, and American authorities try and close it down. And I don't know if you saw recently, but they closed it down from wherever it's being hosted, and then 10 minutes later it pops up being hosted from North Korea. And they can't do anything about that. And it becomes instantly a state issue, and it sort of escalates in that way. I think once it's created, you've just lost it. That you can't ever get it back. So.
No.
Not really.
I'm sure.
Pandora.
Yeah, but all technologies we make are Pandora's boxes, aren't they?
Yeah.
They are made. And then they exist. So I'm kind of from history, I think we can safely say that there are forces that want to drive development, and there are concerns that comes with that. But then we live with it.
It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
It is, and inevitable is a good word.
It's just how you participate in it.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, I mean, making the rules is very hard because it's a sort of field where the developments go faster than legislation can actually catch up. I mean, it takes a few years to get laws past governments, and actually in that time things developed far more quickly in the technology sense. for instance, with the video viewing in America, that there's this system that if you broadcast it to an audience, then you cannot do it because you're actually competing with the agencies, the broadcasting agencies. So what they do is just make individual connections to every single household, and it's basically the same, but it's a semantics discussion. And I think that's also the case with this, that people making the laws and making the rules are usually one step behind of the development.
And people are so different as well. I mean, you had this case in California when they wanted to introduce, Pacific Gas and Electricity, PG&E, wanted to introduce remotely read gas and electricity meters. And both the most right and the left wing was totally opposed to that, but for different reasons. In general, privacy was an issue. Being read, being seen, that's in many countries that's absolutely taboo. So just hooking your stuff up to like governmentally run services might be a tough sell in many countries.
But it's happening already. I mean, I think people just don't know about it. That it's being done by government, also by companies, but also by governments. I mean, the GPS tracking that the FBI does in America on cars, it's cell phone tracking.
Which Volvo does here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to take much more time. I hope this was sort of indirectly relevant. If you had expected me to explain what the Internet of Things is, I don't know if I can't really define that, but I could sort of give some indirect hints, perhaps. So thank you. Come grab me after.
Yeah, so I would also like to take the opportunity to share some thoughts and ideas. Yeah, that will maybe also be for half an hour or so. But would you like to get some more drinks or get a quick leg stretcher before that? Or should we just keep going? Keep going?
Yeah.
Yep.